on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, every single social media platform. And you can do this globally. You can listen to us in the motherland, in Africa, or in Asia. So I'm looking forward to getting your comments and any issues or concerns that you may have. I'm also Detroit Police Commissioner Linda Bernard, so I always talk a little bit about law enforcement when I first open up. And that is that right here in Detroit, uh, crime has actually decreased. I'm very happy to say that across the board. Of course, gun crimes continue to be a problem throughout the nation, and most of the nation this week has seen all of the coverage that we got about a school shooting in Oxford, Michigan here, which unfortunately killed 4 children and injured 7 other individuals. That young man is being tried as an adult, and his parents have been charged for involuntary manslaughter because apparently they gave him the gun. I don't have the details, and I'm sure it's being covered by CNN, MSNBC, and certainly Fox. So you can get all the germane details from that. But I want to point out that did not, I repeat, it did not happen in the city of Detroit. Um, African Americans are not involved in this crime at all, except to say that it was Detroit's finest, the Detroit Police Department, that captured the parents as they were trying to get out of the state after it was announced that they were in fact going to be charged in with respect to some aspect of their son's crime. So DPD came to the rescue. So we have to be proud of Detroit's finest, and actually one of the finest police departments in the nation, because as you know, Detroit doesn't have the issues that you see rearing their ugly head throughout America in most urban centers. No killings by police, and we certainly don't condone any loss of life, not even one loss of life in any capacity. Now, today though, we're going to talk about what I think is one of the primary reasons for crime, and that is the lack of education. That is ignorance. That is the lack of having the opportunity to engage in meaningful development of one's mind, skills, and abilities. And a man who knows a lot about this, and particularly about African American students here in Detroit, which is, of course, the majority school population, 88%, I believe, something thereabouts, is a very distinguished man by the name of Mr. Beasley. First name again, I'm sorry.
James.
I should know this because my uncle is James. James Beasley, JB.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what that J was for, but okay. Mr. James Beasley. Mr. James Beasley has a company called, let me just tell you about him before, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Before we talk about his company, he's the past chairman of the Detroit Cable Commission. For those of you who don't know, Comcast has the internet contract largely for the city of Detroit.
Yes.
And of course, most residents in this city use Comcast for internet and for telephone and everything else kind of service. 5% of Comcast has to pay 5% of its revenues from the city of Detroit to the city of Detroit.
Yes,
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's for a public interest.
Yeah, it's for public education and government
Education.
access.
E was for the education.
Yes.
Public education and government access.
Yes.
And for years, you chaired that commission, correct?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
And that commission did what?
That commission was
Beasley.
primarily the regulatory agency for anyone who brought any broadband or fiber inside the city of Detroit. As you know, the roads, the highways and byways are paid for under taxpayers of the city of Detroit. Anytime someone comes in, for example, and does a curb cut, or cuts into the street after our taxpayer money has paid for it, what it does is it accelerates the depreciation. And so what we would have, they pay a tax to the city for that, for the use of the public rights of way. And
Okay. Now, specifically with respect to the Cable Commission, the Public Education and Government Access was a station in the city of Detroit, was it not?
Yes.
A full-fledged commission. And who created that commission?
Well, the commission was actually created under the former Mayor Coleman Young.
Okay.
When initially brought broadband cable television into the city of Detroit. And the reason it was set up was to have a global agency that would give some thought to broadband communication and the way that it was going to affect it. Now, keep in mind when Don Barton first came in, all cable was a visual image coming across a cable line. What broadband has done is it's given us the ability to have words, data, graphics, visual, all coming down the same pipe all at the same time.
I see.
And so what that does is that enhances access to information, and it also enhances access to opportunity. Therefore, that's why broadband across the country now is not an optional kind of thing. It's a mandatory kind of thing. So.
I see. And what you were particularly interested in was the ability, as I understand it, for the community, for the community's will and opportunities and so forth, to be broadcast on what we call on television, quite frankly, from a public access standpoint, and you were interested in it from an education standpoint.
Absolutely.
Can you explain why and how?
Okay. Well, first of all, the reason it was why was because we need it. You know, when you look at an informed electorate, you know, people aren't going to be smart as the information they have. If you talk to the wisest, you know, older women we have in our neighborhoods, the grandmothers and the great grandmothers, they had a line that they would say. They would say, you know, boy, if he knew better, he'd do better. Mm-hmm. Well, we need to use all of our accesses so we can communicate, so we can know. And so, unfortunately, that piece is no longer in place where inside the city of Detroit, if Linda Bernard, Attorney Bernard wanted to go and do this show, you should have the ability to walk in and have an access for a platform to have your voice heard and to have it disseminated across Detroit.
I see, and that doesn't exist anymore. What happened to it?
It sort of got swallowed up under what I would call political division. You know, when it was initially set up, you had Channel 10, which was government access. You had Channel 22, which was educational access. And we also had rights for a couple of other channels which were yet to be lit up. Well, politics, they pretty much went to the point where city council says, we're going to take one station and we're going to use it. The mayor's office is taking another station, they're going to use it. And so both, you know, have access. And some of the programming has been carryover programming from what we used to do. But one of the things that was missing was we used to put on a show. It came on a weekly show, and we had a great executive director in Kamal Aben-Ra, and he came from public PBS, so his experience served us well. But we had a weekly show called Channel 10 News, and what we did was focused in on the elements that concern Detroiters, and we had actually reached out more Detroiters than 247 because we were telling stories of their community about what was going on. So when you got rid of that, you sort of lost that umbilical connection.
Oh, okay, let's take it. Put your chair in. They can't hear you. Better? No, I'm sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
But our engineer said that we had to do something a little differently, which was great. We weren't sort of making the connection that we needed to make with you. So, okay, we're back now, Jim, and we're gonna put you back on the air here in just a minute or so.
Okay.
But what you're saying is really interesting. So we got rid of the public access part of. And is there a cable station now? There's still a media division.
Yeah, there's media division.
But they go around taping stuff for the, as you say, for the city,
yes.
but not for the community.
But the community should have access as well, because you know we have our story to tell, and that's one of the things that we were able to achieve through Channel 10 and News 10 was telling the story by Detroiters for Detroiters.
Is that one of the reasons that you became so interested in education, or why are you interested in education? Ladies and gentlemen, you wait, you hear, this man's going to blow your mind. He blew mine. I listened to him for 3 hours. I promise you we won't take that much time today. But he actually blew my mind in a 5-minute presentation that he made recently, and I thought it would be very important for you to hear from him today personally. So, just one other point on the public access programming, which was important to getting the community's voice out, you've indicated Detroit doesn't have that, but all the suburbs around Detroit do have it.
Yes,
Is that
they
correct?
do. Yeah, they didn't deconstruct their programming.
I see.
I know Southwest Oakland County, they've got programming. And as a matter of fact, when we were doing that, we were actually going and winning national awards, at the National Association of Telecommunication Officers and Advisors. We were actually bringing home good recognition to the city of Detroit for the job we were doing.
That's fantastic. Now you have that experience, and I would imagine that your experience previous to the commission is what made you so sought after to help to be the chairperson of the Detroit Cable Commission, because you work with IBM, you work with Hewlett Packard, you work with BlackBerry, Bell Education, Bell Building Education, Leaders for Life, so many other entities that are all technological before anybody even knew what technological really was. Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So you were a natural fit for that. So, but your commitment is really to education now, as I understand it. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Tell me how and why.
Well, how, as I look at your shirt, and your shirt is my answer. It's because I'm blessed, and I realize that. I feel like I've led a charmed life. I'm a Detroiter. I tell Detroit, it's all in my DNA. I tell people I'm Detroit born, Detroit bred. When I die, I'll be Detroit dead. That's how deep it is.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah. But as we were sharing yesterday, my father was a former sharecropper down in Mississippi, and he left Mississippi with a third grade education. And with that third grade education, James Jeremiah Beasley Sr. was the smartest man I know. He came up here, got a job working for Ford Motor Company, and held on to that job until he retired for 44 years, raised a family, and instilled in us the virtues of education, what we needed to do in order to learn.
I see.
And that's why I'm so grateful right now. Our kids should have the same opportunity.
And you went to the mighty Northwestern High School, which had a number of distinguished graduates in addition to yourself. Can you name a few of them?
Oh yeah. When we think about Northwestern, the list goes on. It starts out, if you're looking politically, you're looking at the late, great Congressman John Conyers was a graduate of Northwestern. The late, great Judge Damon Keith was a graduate, of Northwestern. If you're in the music, you understand that Casey Kasem from America's Top 40 was a graduate of Northwestern. More contemporarily, Ray Parker Jr., who wrote Ghostbusters, he was a graduate of Northwestern. When you look at the Super Bowl champions, Ron Johnson was a graduate of Northwestern on the great Pittsburgh Steelers team. And even today, when you think of the most contemporary intellectual we have of our times, is prolific Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is a graduate, of Northwestern. So it's a school with great history, and history not only should be preserved, but it should be presented and multiplied for the future.
And James Beasley is certainly part of that history. And your career has been, in my view anyway, and your knowledge is equally distinguished.
Thank you.
So now you've done all this stuff. You went to Northwestern High. Where'd you go to college?
Well, I actually went to college at Eastern Michigan University.
EMU.
And it was interesting. I go back and I laugh with some of my friends. We say at Northwestern we used to call ourselves the Big NO. And I really didn't know what the Big NO stood for until I started my first class at Eastern Michigan University. And I looked around the room, and I was the only black face in the entire class, and that had never happened to me at Northwestern. Now I knew what the Big NO stood for.
What that stand for?
Negroes only. But when I say that, we had some bad Negroes in there, but that's not really true. We got Negroes only and the Suhus. We had an Oriental family, Melvin Suhu, and I hate to say it, but they were ethnically stereotypical. Melvin, Martin, and Gail all graduated summa cum laude and valedictorians of their respective graduating classes.
In the Asian community.
Yeah.
That's the Asian stereotype.
Yeah.
Brainy and very academically oriented and very disciplined, really disciplined.
And it started at
more
the
than
home.
discipline.
It started
it's
at home.
discipline,
Yes.
right? Starts in their homes.
Yes.
Okay, and so you went to EMU, and then you became president of the Black student body at EMU. Is that correct?
No, I became president of the entire student senate. I was the first African American student ever elected president of the student senate. And the year before, we'd elected Leonard Posey, a Cass Tech graduate. He was the first student elected president of the student body. And we had a lot of breakthroughs at the time. We had Pat Swan, Pat was the first black homecoming queen. So we were coming up here breaking down barriers during the early 70s at Eastern Michigan.
Now, see, and you have a number of distinguished alumni from EMU. Ladies and gentlemen, I was their first African American on the Board of Regents there. I was only like 24 years old. So, I mean, my portrait's in the boardroom. But anyway, on the real, and was able to accomplish a number of things, including getting the first black president at Eastern Michigan University. But there are a number of distinguished alumni at EMU. Would you mind telling our audience about them? And all of those of you out there who know anything about EMU, stand up and cheer.
Yeah, we had some great, distinguished alumni here. Probably one of the most notable ones is former Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater. Rodney and I, we came up as freshmen together, and Rodney subsequently graduated, went to the University of Arkansas, got his law degree. And there he met Hillary Clinton, and he got involved with the Clinton. He was a Secretary of Transportation for the Arkansas Highway Commission, and ultimately he became Secretary of Transportation in President Clinton's second term. When we talk about some other people we graduated, But
now what's he doing? When he was Secretary of Transportation for Bill Clinton, but now he is a board member for.
Oh yeah, he serves on various boards right now.
Okay.
Currently, he sits on the board of Delta Airlines.
Wow.
He had formerly sat on the board for Kansas City Southern Railroad. He sits on the board of directors for Verizon, and his interests are not just limited to those areas. He was also been a board member for United Way and very active in working with the Urban League. So he's deeply committed, and in his current profession he is a partner with the law firm Squires Patton Boggs, which is the third largest law firm in the world.
Correct. I know the law firm well, but Rodney Slater's a very cool brother, and I've met him, and he's very, very distinguished, and I really appreciate the fact that Bill Clinton, who is referred to as our first black president, was the person to appoint him to that role. And they say that, ladies and gentlemen, just as an aside, because Bill Clinton appointed 4 blacks to his cabinet, first president in history to appoint 4 black African American persons to his cabinet. And by contrast, unfortunately, President Obama only appointed 1 to his cabinet, which unfortunately said to me that he really didn't have a lot of confidence, despite the fact that he's a black man, in other black people. That would be like me as a woman being the first female president and only appointing 1 woman to my cabinet, which would tell you
when you break through, you should bring someone else
right.
with you as well.
No, he didn't do that, but but Bill Clinton did, and in so many different ways, as we both know. But having said that, there were other prominent people at EMU, and we're going to get back to you in just 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, one of my favorites is Judge Greg Mathis.
Okay.
He's another EMU alumnus, and he's been a great benefactor for us in terms of helping the Black Alumni Chapter, which are one of the founding members, and we've been in existence over 40 years. And the reason we're so active is the doors of opportunity that we were able to come through. We need to stay engaged so we can ensure that those opportunities, exist for our kids and our grandkids. And it almost goes back to when you look at the preamble. And the preamble talks about rights, and you do it not only for yourselves but our posterity. Because I realized that when I came to college, we were the most blessed generation of any 400 years that we've been here on this continent. We had it was right after Dr. King was killed. Doors of opportunity were open, and affirmative action was in place. And they should have called it affirmative access, because that's all it did, was gave you access to an opportunity that you didn't have. But once you got into it, there was no program. Either you competed at the highest level or you were thrown out. So we learned how to grow, and we learned how to manipulate and work and make the system work to our advantage.
Now, there is one African American who's going to be honored, I guess, next weekend at Eastern Michigan University, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and I'm going to let our distinguished guest, Mr. James Beasley, tell you who that is. But right now, I just want to take this real quick station break. You're watching Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world and the nation. You can watch us on, obviously, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, anything, everything. We're always there. You can pull us up, comment, or call us. Let us know what you think. Having said all of that, I want to go back to our special guest today, Mr. James Beasley, who has told you why he is a distinguished man and leader in this community and continues to be so. And he's getting ready to tell you what's happening next weekend for a famous guy from Eastern Michigan University. And then we're going to get to the real meat of this discussion.
All right, thank you. Yeah, well, he's not any, he's a famous guy from Eastern Michigan University.
That's correct.
He's from the east side of Detroit, the pride of King High, and one of the, he's been named as one of the 75 greatest players ever to play the game of basketball. As you know, probably from that introduction, it's the Iceman, George Gervin. George is being honored under his alma mater, Eastern Michigan University, and rightfully so, for his distinguished career being in the NBA Hall of Fame and for his accomplishments on and off the court.
So everybody can come to this. It'll actually be going on next week at the same time this broadcast airs, but they can shoot up there and participate.
Yep.
Up at EMU?
Yep, the game time is 1 o'clock, and it's on the 11th of December, Saturday 11th of December. So it's going to be
right after this show.
At the Convocation Center, which is right next to Right Nearson Stadium, where the bowl-bound Eastern Michigan football team plays their games at.
Okay, and it's open to the public.
It's open to everybody.
Okay, so if you want to see George Gerwin and everything, right after you listen to us, shoot on up to EMU and hang out with the big fellas. Now, I invited you to talk today, one, because of your distinguished career, and because I thought our audience needed to understand what you've done in terms of your career and the importance of access to communication and communication modalities. But in order to really understand that, people have to be, educated. Correct. You got to have an education. And I want to talk a little bit about the Detroit public school system, which you are an expert concerning. As I understand it, we have about 106 schools in the city of Detroit that serve grades K through 12. Only about 53,000 students, probably about 50,000 now. I don't know what they just had the count here about a week or so ago.
It's average about 50,000.
Yeah, so it's reduced now from the stats that I have, which they didn't produce a report for 2020, so I'm looking at.
Okay, we can go with your numbers. Give them 53,000. We'll be benevolent today.
Okay, yeah. 78% of those students were eligible for free and or reduced free lunches and or reduced price lunches, and 12.6% of those students then are English language learners. Now, you have data that is very disturbing about the Detroit public school system. And when you hear this, ladies and gentlemen, 82% of the students then were black, probably about 88% now, I would guess. And 13% then were Hispanic, and that I think that amount has decreased now as well. Only about 2% were white. The data that you have, however, is extremely disturbing, and it's not just recent. I mean, this is based on a history, if you will, of profound non-performance. I can't think of any institution that could have the numbers that you're getting ready to share with our audience that could continue to be in existence. I can't understand it. Why don't you share with us the real facts and tell us how you got those facts?
Okay. Well, first of all, when you look at the facts, numbers are numbers, and they speak for themselves. So what we try to do is, educational researchers, we go to the verifiable sources to retrieve our information. We'll go to the Michigan Department of Education, or we'll go to online published databases that have this public information available. And when we talk about schools, the reason it bothers me so much because, I'm not only educational researcher, but when I was in college.
And the name of your company?
The name of the company is Two Sigma Research Group.
How did it get to be Two Sigma when you got this Kappa hat over here?
Well,
just wondering. Two Sigma Research.
Yeah, Sigma is a mathematical term. And,
it is?
Yes, it is.
I didn't know that.
And it's a synonym for standard deviation. Okay. So 1 sigma would be equal to 1 standard deviation. 2 sigma will be equal to 2 standard deviations, and that is integral to what we do, because what we do is we measure growth, and that's the only way you're going to really begin to understand where you're at, is to take an assessment.
Correct.
You know, a big part of what we do, and I've been heavily influenced by the experiences that I had working in information technology and the science-based fields, is we realize everything begins with from quantitative analysis. You know, everything begins with a number. Before you start, you need to know your baseline, you know, and you have to put things, you know, in place. So with that, you know, we do research, and we come up and let the information know where we're at, because if you're going to solve a problem, the first step to problem resolution is problem identification. So you need to know what is the problem. It's interesting, you know, Dale Carnegie, whenever he would open up any meetings, he would always say he didn't care what the meeting was. He only had 4 questions he would ask himself. First question is, what is the problem? Second question is, what are the causes? The third question is, what are the possible solutions? And the fourth question is, what's the best possible solution? So with that in mind, when we ask ourselves, what is the problem? Well, we start to look at Detroit, and we see that we've got the lowest performing educational system of any major city in America. And that's not...
Say that again.
We got
Make people understand what this means.
The lowest performing education system of any city in America.
That's because our students don't test well. They can't...
If you use the nation's report card, you know, which is called NAEP, which is the National Education Assessment Program, and it's given out every other year. And it's the one tool that we have where we can compare how we're doing against everybody else in the country. You know, they generate a report that's a stack ranking of the top 20 of the 20 largest school systems in the country. And it's only given every other year.
Goddamn
so
show.
6 years running.
You see what I'm saying?
Detroit has been 20
Tell
out
Jimmy
of
to
20.
So we have the worst report card, so to speak, in terms of academic performance for Detroit students in the country.
Yes.
Being mean to Tasha.
That's unbelievable.
Yes.
And the budget for DPS is, you know, there's millages, all kinds of stuff. What's the budget approximately?
It's probably close or approaching $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah. When you
For 50,000 students, and we're number 20 out of 20.
Yeah, and when you think of 50,000, that's just how many are in Detroit public schools proper.
Through.
Now the bigger part of the pie, the most largest, is probably is over 100,000. You know, because you have to take into consideration charter schools and private schools, and therein lies the problem, because we think that there's a strong push, which has been driven by the former Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, you know, in terms of wanting to charterize and privatize education. Because when you look at that budget of almost $1 billion, that's a lot of money. You know, and wherever there's going to be money, there's going to be activity to consume.
To get the money. Jesse Jackson says the best question is always where the money go.
Yeah.
So the point is that the money's been coming to Detroit, and even to, as you say, to Detroit public schools, because that's what this assessment is based on, or charter schools and private schools too. No,
Yeah,
the nation's report card is public
Road
schools only.
Yeah, they test math and they test English language. Those are the two major areas that they take a look at, and those are trends that we have to do better on. And when you look at Detroit's last report card, if you look at a scale, and the NAEP, or the National Report Card scale, runs from 0 to 500. Detroit's scale score was 205.
You have got to be kidding me.
205. That was grade 4 mathematics in 2009.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so it's big room for improvement, and the kind of improvement we need to make is we don't have time for baby steps.
But this has been going on forever. Well, y'all, I mean, there's a whole generation of people that have not been educated.
And that's the problem. That's the problem. And it's interesting when you look at when the dip came in Detroit public school performance, because it wasn't always like that. You know, when I was in high school, when we were in high school, Detroit had a school system, and that's what they called it. Detroit Public DPS, Detroit Public School System.
Yes, it was a system.
And it was a system. And if you understand scientifically what a system is, system has three elements. All systems have three elements. You have input, you have process, and you have output. Now, the input are the students that are coming into it.
Input, process, and output.
Every system has those levels. If it doesn't have those three levels, it's not a system.
Okay. All right. So now, I just want to go back over this real quickly for you. A system has three components:
Three components.
input, process, and output. And the other thing that you said was that educational research is very important, and that any system has what you call a standard deviation, and then you measure growth. And then what was the third thing? Those are the two things that you do.
Yeah, those are the two major things you have to do, because when we look at progress, you have to take a look at where you're starting from.
Right.
And if you're starting from a deficit position, that just means you need to have an accelerated learning approach if you're going to make up time and grow in time.
You know, you think like math. I love it. Math was my worst subject. I was really super smart, graduated magna cum laude and stuff. But math, I always hated. But now I know, I understand why, because I want to fudge the facts, maybe fudge the. And you could do that with language.
Name names.
That's the favorite thing. You can do it with words, but you can't do it with numbers.
Yeah, numbers
Can't
speak
fudge
for
numbers.
themselves. You know, they speak for themselves. It tells us what it is, what it ain't, and what it's supposed to be. You know, all three of those things work in concert.
So you know, you've got that kind of brain. Okay, so we're the lowest performing major city in Michigan and the lowest performing city in the country.
Yes, large city in the country.
Large city. I mean,
our literacy level for all subgroups is even lower than the state of Mississippi. You know, the literacy level is lower than English language learners. Those are those who are learning to speak English for the first time.
Didn't Marbrisa come
so
on
people who
on
come
your
in
show?
who like people who come across the border and this and that and the
Mar-
other.
Those
Who
who come
can't
in
speak
from
English.
Afghanistan.
They come from and their
that's
literacy
the one that
rate
used to mess around
grows faster
with
than
Alumni,
than
right?
people that have been here.
Yes.
Fundamentally, why do you think that is? Because we have access
and
to
what's the other one's
TV
name?
and radio. I
Who
mean,
was
I read
who was
once
the one
that
that kept?
Sidney
Okay,
Poitier,
Marbrisa
when
is
he
the one that
came here,
said she invited
from
guys
the
over to
islands, I
play
forgot
chess,
which one,
but she
actually.
really
But
wanted
he
to
did
have
speak
sex.
English.
And then
And he
she
taught
just tell
himself
him, hey,
English
you
listening to
wanna
the
just
radio.
fuck?
He was a waiter in New York City.
That was her,
like,
right?
Staying in somebody's basement or something.
Okay. And now
he
who
taught
was the
himself
other one?
English listening to the radio. And as you know, he speaks the King's English.
Yes, he does.
Perfect
Did the
English.
Osler deal come on the show?
No fooling around.
Osler
He doesn't speak
deal.
like I speak or anything. He speaks perfectly. Why do you think that
Okay,
people
so
who
let me
come
see,
here
what other
from
lady?
other countries
The,
that don't have any English
Oh,
language
the Mexican
fluency
girl, she
whatsoever.
came on, right?
or familiarity do better than we do? We're talking about black folks now.
Yeah, it's
I'm gonna
this
tell you, the
combination
girl with
factor,
her name
you
is
know. One is you got to be motivated. You know, learning is.
Damn,
is
you know the
is
girl?
motivation, kind of thing.
No,
Once
not
you're
her.
motivated,
We
then you
lost
have to
her
be
footage
exposed to
anyway.
proper methods, methodologies for going. You know, when we learn how to read, you know, you got different schools of thought right now in terms of how to teach reading. Some people want to teach it using whole word reading. We learn how to read using phonics.
Yes, phonetically.
Phonetically. You know, you look at
You sound a word out.
look at a
M
letter and a
or
sound and
text.
She came, right?
You figure it out.
And then the,
figure
then
it
the
out.
lady
And
that
see, I
played
don't
in the
care how big the
backyard,
word
right?
is,
Correct.
you break it into syllables.
Correct.
That's
You know,
everything
and
in
that
the
allows you to understand. You know?
Right.
And so when we can get back down to
Who
truly
else?
teaching the basics,
How
like
many
that,
times?
then
How
now
many
you
times
have
did
the
Marbrisa
framework.
come?
You know, for building a house. You know, you can't build a house until you put a foundation in place, and that's the fundamental foundation we need. When we teach the people how to learn how to read, you know, in our elementary schools, you know, from grade pre-K through 3, we're learning how to read. From 4 and above, we're reading to learn. So if you don't get that foundation done early, you won't. You never be where you need to be at.
So from 0 to 3 are the most important years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
I
that
was
was our
fully
focus.
reading and writing in the third grade, no question. I was reading in kindergarten, right?
Yeah. My mother was a reading paraprofessional in Detroit Public Schools over at Angel Elementary School, and I can still remember her
Was Sal
as a kid
just on the show?
before I even went to kindergarten, sitting me down,
Yeah.
making me write out the alphabet,
Sal was a
write
guest?
my phone
You knew your
number
colors?
out. I knew my colors.
You knew how to spell your name.
Knew how to spell
You
my
knew
name.
where your address was.
Absolutely. And you know what she said? Why she taught me that? She said, because I'm not going to have you going up there embarrassing me thinking I ain't taught your dumb self nothing.
But the point is that you had motivation. I had that from my dad, because my mother died when I was 5.
Okay.
So my dad and my grandmother did it. And I can remember sitting in my grandmother's lap. She was a Bible reader.
Mm-hmm.
So she was teach us to read from the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned what letters were, and then my sister taught us on the steps of the house that she hit me with a ruler, and she had a blackboard on the basement wall, and it was that kind of thing.
Yeah.
She took us to school every weekend.
Mm-hmm. But the knowledge was being passed down through the family.
Yeah.
It'll look
Which
nice
is-
once
which is
it's
the family
thinned out.
structure.
But that's not happening now.
When you start looking at the
Well, we just watching too much
dynamic,
TV,
yeah, we do. It's
listening
way
to too much music,
easy.
and I fault parents, including those in my own family, ladies and gentlemen, who play vulgar, loud rap music in the car with their kids. That kind of stuff in your brain, I think it's extremely detrimental for children.
Right.
And that goes back to what you say is motivation
Mm-hmm.
and
that shadow
methodology.
should be off
What do you
the
think?
wall now.
I think you're absolutely correct.
I got my black
because
gold
we
star,
are,
and I got
a
my
byproduct
blue
of our
jeans
collective
and
society, and that's the
then all
challenge
the
we
other
have.
blue lights
And
and
one
shit.
of the biggest concerns you have is if when you begin to, and we know there's so many of these educators doing the very best they can under some very trying circumstances, But at the end of the day, we still have a responsibility of learning how to transfer knowledge, and other cultures can do it. Why can't we do it,
I don't understand it, but I don't understand now the way parents are treating their children. They smoke weed around in the car. I mean, I opened the car, the other door, a family the other day. There were like 4 kids in the back seat. Weed come. I'm like, well, you guys smoking weed with the kids in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the fact that if you got stopped by the police and they smelled it, they would take all the kids away. They'd go to protective services because that's considered child abuse. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You can't do these things. You have a responsibility to have fresh air, if any air in the car. Certainly not. Even smoking would be bad, but smoking weed is outrageous. And of course, I'm listening to artists that I love greatly, from Cardi B, to Megan Thee Stallion, but you can't listen to that stuff with the kids in the car. You
Yeah.
have to listen to it when you're rolling by yourself, like I do.
I look back to the kind of music we were listening to when I grew up, and I was thinking, I said, boy, we've come a long way from I got sunshine on a cloudy day
Right.
to pimping ain't easy.
Right. Right.
It's about, we've lost
But you
our
say
boundaries.
these young minds need, you call it motivation
Your motivation and direction,
and direction.
Yeah.
And that direction can't be what I like as an adult. It has to be what's best for that young mind. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Because I like hip hop. It's my favorite form of music. But that's not what they need to hear.
Yeah. Well, everything in moderation. And everything in moderation. When I think about when I was at Eastern Michigan and we were involved in the Black Student Union, one of the things we would always talk about is we were talking about genocide. And genocide, for those who may not know, genocide is just a collective killing off, of a people, collective destruction of a people. And I would say, well, how can we have genocide? There's 25 million of us. How can we have genocide there? Well, probably the most insidious form of genocide we have, which is going on right now, is what I like to call academic genocide. Because when we are now living in a world where we are growing artificial intelligence. And
Yes, we are.
artificial intelligence
Which
is-
makes us obsolete.
yeah, it grows faster than natural intelligence. Educators' job is to grow national intelligence. And we need to find a way to expand that. Our kids need to be able to compete and not have to opt out of taking a test because I don't want to be assessed. That's not a logical long-term.
Isn't that what they just
solution.
said in Detroit? This is 2021, and they said what? They weren't going to take the national test?
Yeah. Well, they have no choice in terms of taking a national test. But let me
The
put
National Educational Assessment
yes.
Test. And incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching WJZZ Cool TV. Chop It Up with Attorney Linda Bernard, also Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. You can watch us and comment concerning our broadcast on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, every social media platform. Please let us know what you think. Dial in, let us know what's happening. Send us an email or, as I said, give us a call. Okay, back to what you were just telling me about this genocide.
Yeah, genocide. Let's take a look at the assessments. The state of Michigan, they have an annual assessment, and it's called M-STEP. And it's
M-STEP.
M-STEP, and
Okay.
it assesses grades 3 through 8 for
Okay.
proficiency in reading and proficiency in math. Now, Detroit, we've just talked about the population. So, say we got 52,000 students in Detroit public schools. In the last M-STEP evaluation, Detroit had 381 students out of the 52,000 which actually took the exam.
It's voluntary. The schools don't, because they don't take the exam because they don't want to show that we don't know anything.
That's they encourage parents to opt out.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and
Who would opt out of a proficiency exam for their children so they know where their strengths and weaknesses are?
those are beneficial. They're afraid. I said that people will make an argument that our kids are tested too much. But we were always tested when we were in school. You remember, not only did we have the state exam, we had the Iowa exams and the other, we had the SAT, PSAT, so being tested was just a natural part of the education process.
And you weren't taught the test like you are now.
Yeah.
The only thing that's taught is the test.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
So that the district quote will look good. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes it is. And so as a homeowner, in my community, I've got live in a great community inside the city of Detroit, the University District, and I've got a school which is right on the corner of the street that I stay on, Palmer Park Preparatory Academy. And for the last testing period, they had less than 10 students test, so we couldn't even get any comparable data. We could get no data.
That's
for what's
intentional.
going on. That's intentional.
Because the teachers and the principal and everyone should have made sure that everyone took the test, so they could get a good baseline on their students and know where they should improve.
Yeah.
If they don't want to know.
Yeah, and if it's not intentional, it's equally as injurious because we don't know.
It's what it's all about the Benjamins, baby. It really is, because they get the money based on the body count, not based on the results.
Yeah, and there's extra money which comes in too. You talked about the number of students that were on free and reduced lunch program. Well, if you're on free and reduced lunch program, there's a national program called Title money, and Title I money is extra $3,000 a year, which is set aside to teach poor kids to learn how to read.
$3,000 per student.
Per student.
Wow.
That's in addition to the base line allowance.
To teach kids how to read.
How to read. That's the fundamental purpose of Title I money, is how do we teach these poor kids to learn how to read. So we'll put money there, but the question is,
what's happening to it?
Yeah, what's happening to it? The money is disappearing, and that's one of the things that our school district does a great job of doing, is we make the money disappear.
You say DPS makes the money disappear.
Yeah, make the money disappear. But again, what are you getting for your money?
Correct.
So those are fundamental questions you need to ask. And you also, I like to bring something else that I think our listeners really need to understand, and that's the fundamental law which governs education nationally was written, and I was surprised this wasn't overturned by the previous administration when Betsy DeVos was the so-called Secretary of Education. But it's the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. And what the Every Student Succeeds Act done, it was passed by the Obama-Biden administration, and it was the Education Act which totally replaced the abysmal failure of No Child Left Behind. And so within the Every Student Succeeds Act,
that was Bush's program.
That was Bush's program. And so within that Every Student Succeeds Act, it gives new provisions that schools and municipalities and communities can use for funding their opportunity. One of the things that it stresses is it talks about a preference for developing PPP, public-private partnerships. And that's a new potential source of funding that we have developed a strategy to leverage to give the school systems the resources they need up front so that they've got the resources to be more effective and to turn this around. And one of the second provisions that is called for in ESSA is what we call pay for success models. And what
I already like the sound of it.
Pay for success models. And to me, it's a common sense model.
It's absolutely.
You know,
I
because
already know.
right now the model, if I could use that vernacular and put it in the context, the model we have is what I like to call a pay for failure model. So what do I mean? I mean, like, if you take some of our past purchases in Detroit, we spent over $60 million buying a reading system called a Marzano, nationally recognized school system. And after implementation of that system, we were still testing 20 out of 20 in terms of performance. So you're paying a
That's
whole
at the
lot of
bottom
money
of the barrel,
and
ladies
getting
and
a whole
gentlemen.
lot of
We are
money
the worst of the worst.
and getting abysmal returns. Now, if you were to turn
$60 million?
that was in, and that wasn't done under this administration. That was done before this administration got here. They've entered into some new contracts, and we're still waiting to see what effect that it has on the long-term trajectory.
The $60 million.
Yeah, but what we're able to do is we're able to compute what the actual, based upon the actual performance, we're able to compute how long at this current rate it's going to take us before we reach a level of proficiency. And at the current performance of this school system, it's going to take us over 100 years to reach a level of proficiency based upon the current performance.
I'm going to come back and ask you the biggest question of all, which is how and why, and thirdly, how we break this cycle of failure and, if you call it, genocide. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Chop It Up with Attorney Linda Bernard, also a.k.a. Police Commissioner Linda Bernard. You're watching us on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, any and all social media platforms. You're on Wjzz Cool TV, the coolest station in the world and the nation. Our guest is Mr. James Beasley, who is an academic, if you will, scientist, educational, I would call guru, who has a company. I wrote it down too. I've just been moving on my baby.
2 Sigma Research Group, affiliated with 2 Sigma Research Group.
2 Sigma Research, right? Because the Sigma stands for 2 Sig stands for standard deviation, and so he's saying that we're at least 2 points, 2 full points, in terms of standard deviation away from where we're 20 points.
Yeah.
20 points from where we're supposed to be in terms of a standard deviation for school systems. Since we're not, Detroit is number 20 out of 20.
Yeah, can I explain something to you? I want to share something with you. One of the things that we do is we base all our research upon research which has already been proven. And Dr. Benjamin Bloom, for educators, he's well known for inventing Bloom's taxonomy, which is an approach, a widely accepted approach for teaching and learning. Bloom's taxonomy. He's out of the University of Chicago, and back in 1984, he did a study he called the 2 Sigma study, because he wanted to find out, is there a way we can get people to learn at a faster rate?
I like that thought.
Yeah, how do we do it? And so he found out by going with a mastery learning system, which means you have to master level 1 before you move to level 2.
Makes
master
sense.
Level 2, you do that.
Right.
He found that people grew at 1 standard deviation more over the conventional method that they were currently using.
Right.
But he also found
That was significant.
it was very, very significant, very significant. So he also found that if he can combine that with 1-to-1 tutoring, or the equivalent of 1-to-1 tutoring, that we
You
can
get to 2
grow
Sigma.
at another 1 standard deviation.
Absolutely. If I had a tutor, I did all on my own. I have no idea what I'd have been able to do. I was, they asked my dad, could they double promote me, and Daddy said no, because he didn't want me to go into a grade with older people and so forth. And so that held me back. But I was still the number 1 person in my class, in every doggone class, which told you I wasn't really being challenged. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was at IBM, there was only a handful of black students nationally who was competing for these jobs we had at IBM, and we had all decided that we were going to get together, we were going to form a study group, and each one of us would have to study a particular topic. And we went round robin and explained it, and we didn't move further until everybody understood it.
Oh, that was wonderful.
That's the power of tutoring. So
Okay.
Yeah,
Even at a professional level, not just at a school level, at a 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade level.
Absolutely, because we had a common bond and we had a common objective, and we found by working together we could achieve both of those easier. And those are lessons we needed to learn, not only from from a professional level, but on a personal level too. We need to implement that on a local education level as well as a collegiate level. You know, because we can work together. You know, we all have strengths in some areas. You know, and we need to find a way to bring it together.
But it also depends on the proficiency of the tutor.
It does.
Just having the name tutor doesn't make you a good tutor.
Mm-hmm.
Having the name teacher doesn't, because I spoke on Martin Luther King Day a year ago before Corona, and the teacher misspelled the word anniversary on the board. And that's like a third grade word. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, heck. I felt, you know, but the teachers are not equipped. I'm not sure how they do on these tests. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you know,
Are there teacher proficiency exams?
Yes, and you know what you have to do. You know, it's like
Do DPS teachers and teachers in Michigan take that exam?
Well,
I
know,
would be proud to take it.
Yeah. They have professional training, what they call PD, and there's not enough, but there should always be more. It's like when we were in corporate America, we would always have the concept when we say, sharpen your axe. You have
Absolutely.
to sharpen your axe
I like that.
every day. You know, because whenever you need to use it, you know, it needs to come out. You know, and it needs to come out in a very
And
strong
you're only
way.
as good as your competition.
Yeah, you have to be better than your competition.
Correct.
You know, and when we were competing, you know, you compete to win.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the third part of the United States Army mantra. Winning matters. That's the third prong to their standard. You know, like the Marines have Semper Fi and all, but for the Army, winning matters.
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm a Kappa man today. I put Kappa Alpha Psi because the fundamental purpose of Kappa Alpha Psi is achievement. You know, and I said I'll share this Eastern Michigan story with you too. The line I was on was a Radical 13. There was 13 of us, and if you take 13 random black men on a predominantly white campus and put them together and say what would be the graduation rate after 4 years, well, on our line, out of 13 of us who pledged, 12 of us graduated with our degrees from Eastern Michigan University. The 13th one, Philip Huckabee, out of the late great Philip Huckabee out of Detroit Northwestern, was a musician and my roommate. He left college, going on a world tour, playing with Denise Williams and traveling with Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Wow.
You know,
So he really graduated.
Yeah, he
too,
graduated
But he
and
was a
he's
global citizen at that point.
absolutely, you know. So that's why when I talk to kids and we talk about peer pressure, I tell them peer pressure is neither positive nor negative. Peer
Correct.
pressure is neutral. It
Correct.
depends on the peers you're hanging out with. If
That's
you're hanging
correct.
around knuckleheads, you're going to be influenced to do knucklehead kind of things.
That's correct.
But on the other side, I saw my friends and my fraternity brothers all graduating from Eastern Michigan, and I said I didn't want to be the one to have to go back on the block and not achieve my goal.
But based on what you told me, your daddy would have laid you low anyway, had you even thought about it.
Well, my dad, he was a smart man. You know,
He was not going to let you come back. You couldn't go back at his house.
While I was
for
in
that.
college, I actually worked my way through college by working out a Wayne assembly plant on the assembly line, and that's the best motivation I can have. You know, not only realize I didn't want to do this kind of work for the rest of my life. It's honorable work, it's good work, but
That's
I didn't want to do it. You also get so much more positive reinforcements from the brothers who are working on the line. Saying, "Hey, young brother, you know, better stay in school. You know, keep doing what you got to do." You know, that helped a whole lot. You know?
Oh, I'm sure. But your father would not let you drop out of school because it wasn't even. You know, people talk about I'm graduating from high school and I'm making up my mind what I want to do. That was never a thought.
No.
In my house, my father it was never. All three of us, we were going to college. It wasn't even a thought. He was from Mississippi as well. I mean, there was no such thing as me having to decide or take a break year. There's no breaks. You were going to school, you know?
Yeah.
This whole thing now about we take a pause year, whatever the kids call it these days. It's amazing. We just sit around and do nothing.
And, you know, another thing that was drastically different then when we were growing up and what's going on now is we like to use phrases like it takes a village to raise a child. Well, back then we had the village to raise a child, and it was a community village. Growing up on the west side of Detroit, we had the Fisher YMCA that all the young men went to, and we learned how to swim. We learned how to compete.
I didn't do that, but I did.
Yeah, you had the Boys and Girls Club. You had the West Side Cubs. You know, I was involved in Junior Achievement.
I was in that.
Yeah.
That I did. I remember taking the bus to go to Junior Achievement.
It taught you about business.
Yes,
you know?
it did. And we had projects and stuff that we had to complete.
Yeah.
I remember that. I did Junior Achievement because I was working in high school. And
So
stuff
we do
for
our
real.
kids a major disservice, you know, when we don't have those wraparound services. They give them alternatives to the street.
They don't have any of those now.
Yeah.
None of those things that you talked about, the West Side Cubs.
West Side Cubs are still going on.
I know, but it doesn't have the presence that it used to have.
Yeah, West Side Cubs. Yeah, one of my Eastern Michigan alumni, Randy Craighead, is still over there running the West Side Cubs. You know, and so thank God, you know, we got.
They play baseball.
Football.
Football. That's correct.
Football. You know. Yeah, when you talk about baseball, it makes me remind you of Willie Horton. I didn't mention Willie Horton, another Northwestern graduate. You know, and so.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I didn't know Willie was a Northwestern.
Yeah. Willie Horton. He played for the late great Sam Bishop.
Yeah.
You know, who's his coach? You know.
Yeah, that's
and
amazing.
also our baseball coach at the time was Ron Teasley, and I like to say hello to Ron, Coach Teasley, if he's still listening. Coach Teasley is, thank God, is still being honored. You know, as being original one of the Negro Leaguers. You know, and he was fine. I like to share this story one time. I got a real good friend who's a Major League Hall of Famer, Dave Winfield.
Dave is a friend of mine.
Yeah, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave and I are real tight.
He was the first guy to ever to be offered pro contracts in baseball by the Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he was just an incredible athlete
and a phenomenal
and
person.
very, very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was a Williams Scholar.
Yeah.
When he was at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, I didn't know that part, but I mean, I knew he was smart. But when I first met him, I was impressed.
Yeah, he was, and Dave was able to one time when I had introduced Dave to Coach Teasley when we had the Major League Baseball All-Star game, and he was here in Detroit. And I said, hey, this is our high school coach, former Negro Leaguer. Ron Teasley.
Wow.
This is the man who cut me from the baseball team. I could have been a contender. I could have been playing, but he cut me. But nevertheless, what Dave did for Mr. Teasley one time is they were celebrating the Negro Leaguers out in San Diego where he played ball at, and he flew Mr. Teasley and his wife out to be his guest. They spoke at the Negro League weekend and he just put them up for the whole weekend, and they really appreciated that.
That is a very nice story. I didn't know that. But Dave Winfield is and was a class act. Still is. I mean, he's in New York.
Just turned 70, you know, and so he's doing well.
Yeah, he's doing extremely well. But what do you think we should do about these kids in Detroit who can recite every word to every rap song? I have to ask them, what did they say? What did they say? Because they're talking so fast I can't understand. So they will repeat for me the words in rap songs, but they don't know the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, well, you know, if they knew better, they do better. You know, we have to challenge them. We have to challenge them in a classroom and not let them get off easy. Yeah, I had teachers. When I decided I was going to go to Northwestern, I wanted to go to Northwestern. I was accepted to Cass Tech, but I chose to go to Northwestern.
Okay. Alrighty. Go ahead.
And that made a difference. We had teachers who they put us in an honors curriculum. And as a matter of fact,
I was in honors curriculum.
Yeah, if you know the current rapper Big Sean from Detroit, his late grandmother, Mildred Leonard, who was the first black woman captain on Detroit police force. She retired from there, came into academia. Okay. She was my high school counselor. You know, so you had people who were committed and dedicated.
That's wonderful. Big Sean is a great leader, great influence for youth, I think, in Detroit in a lot of ways. But you are as well. You're a distinguished man, a very learned man, a man who cares about his community, cares about our people. I really appreciate that, and I want to thank you for the time you took to join us today, Mr. James Beasley.
Thank you.
To discuss education and the Two Sigma
Research Group.
Sorry?
2 Sigma Research Group.
Why can't I remember? 2 Sigma Research Group. That's the name of the company. You can reach it. What's your contact information?
I'll give you my direct number. It's 313-377-5201. Or if you want to contact me by email, you can contact me at James J at QWK, the number 2 LRN.net. That's quicktolearn.net.
And we can put that up online as well. Thank you for listening to us today, watching us, and learning really from us today on Chop It Up with Attorney Linda Bernard. It's always a pleasure to see you and participate in this wonderful process that we call life, entertainment, and learning. Thank you again.
Thank you.